Several of you have asked for a video describing the support for the back of the practice. So our goal is to write rational expressions given specific traits. So you can see the x-intercepts are located at -3 and 4, and the y-intercept is at +2. And we're wondering what a rational expression might look like that includes all of this information. The first thing we're going to want to do is go back to what we know about x-intercepts. And if those x-intercepts are at -3 and +4, we're looking for the factors that would make those equal to 0. So the opposite of having a a -3 here, would be including a +3 here in the factor. And once again, that's because we want this whole factor to equal 0. So -3 plus 3 would give us a factor of 0, and that's what we're looking for our x-intercepts. And we do the exact same thing, but the opposite for our other factor. So instead of a +4 here, you can see this would be 4 minus 4 would give you 0 here, and that would give us our x-intercept. So make sure your x-intercepts are actually flipped from your factors so that they equal 0 when you substitute those values in. The other part, and we're done with the x-intercepts actually, now we're just curious about our denominator here, because this is going to have to do with our y-intercept. So before we get there, let's think for a second, how do we find our y-intercepts? And for y-intercepts of rational expressions, we take our numerator, and we divide it by our denominator, and that gives us our y-intercept. Well, the constants in the numerator at this point, our constants are +3 and -4. So at this point, +3 times -4 gives us -12 in our numerator, and we've got to figure out what constant should be in our denominator to give us our y-intercept of +2. So this would be one way to solve it. And some of you are probably thinking right now, well, I know that -12 divided by -6 would give us +2. And you'd be correct. So the best way to do this is to just think to ourselves, well, and you can use algebra to actually solve this too, but our denominator needs to equal -6. Once again, because -12 divided by -6 gives us +2. So all we've got to do down here is write our expression as x minus 6. Okay. Once again, the reason being, if I look at this, 3 times -4 gives me -12. And I divide that by -6, will give me my y-intercept of 2. And that's our goal, right, is to find the y-intercept of 2. So this would be an example of rational expression that has x-intercepts at -3 and 4 with a y-intercept at +2. Well, let's do another example just to make sure we've got it. So let's say we're going to have x-intercepts at -2, 1, 5, and let's add 6 in there too. So a lot of x-intercepts, and our y-intercept, let's say for the sake of conversation, will be at 4. So we're going to start just like we did the last problem, and looking back on what we know with polynomials, this should help us quite a bit. So because we have 4 x-intercepts, we're going to have 4 different factors, and we're going to set this up as, instead of an x-intercept being, well, our x-intercept is at -2, but we need to think to ourselves, what number, if I put -2 in here, what would make this factor equal to 0? So -2 plus 2 would give us a factor of 0. Once again, we're thinking to ourselves, -2, plugging that in for x and seeing what happens. So -2 plus 2 would give us 0, which is our goal. And we're going to take the same pattern and apply it to all these other factors. Instead of a +1, we're going to put x minus 1, so this factor would be 0. And instead of a +5, our factor would be x minus 5. Instead of a +6 for our x-intercept, our factor would be x minus 6. So it's always the opposite. And lastly, this one's a little bit harder because we've got to figure out our numerator over denominator is going to give us our y-intercept. And remember, our y-intercept, as you can see in the top left, is 4. So in order to figure out the value in my numerator, I would take it my 2 times -1 times -5 times -6, and I believe that is, what would that be, -60 divided by our denominator will give us 4. Well, let's use our algebra skills to help with this one because it's a little bit more complicated. I'm just going to put a variable here in the denominator, and that's going to be a 6. So we're really looking for what that d value is, so I know what I have to divide my rational expression by to give us that correct y-intercept of +4. So in order to solve for our variable d, I want to multiply both sides by d to get it out of the numerator. I'm left with -60 equals 4 times d. Divide both sides by 4, and our d value comes out to be, what, -15, I believe. So that would mean we want, down here, our factor to be x minus 15. Okay, and that would be it.